We now move to agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. We do have quite a few apologies this evening. I'll just run through them. Councillor Everton has a work commitment. Councillor Adeniji, Councillor Mohammed Ali Haider, Councillor Renuma Haider, and Councillor Walraven will have personal commitments. Councillor Richard Honeyman is a little bit under the weather. Councillor Lord has a work commitment, and Councillor Rutland is also feeling a bit under the weather as well. So those are our apologies this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we give our kind thoughts towards those who are not unable to be with us because they're ill tonight. Then we move on to item 2, disclosure of interest, to deal with any disclosure by members of any disclosable pecuniary interests and interests other than pecuniary interests as defined under the Seaford Town Council Code of Conduct and Localism Act 2011 in relation to items on this agenda. Does anyone wish to disclose an interest? I wish to disclose an interest in agenda item 15. I'm now a trustee of the Seaford Baptist Church, and there are issues about Seaford Baptist Church coming up under item 15, from which I will abstain. Are there any other disclosures? No, there are none. Public participation. Would anyone, either of you in the public gallery, like to participate at this point by making any points to the meeting? No?
Yeah, that's right.
You're right,
welcome,
yeah.
Peter. He's on under item 11, Rodney. Thank you.
Welcome. Good to have you with us. Now we go to the item 4, which is the minutes of previous meetings. First is a meeting of the full council on the 26th of January. Someone like to propose that to be accepted? A reasonable record. Councillor Brown. Councillor Cash seconds that. All those in favour? Community services on the 17th of February. Would the committee chair like to propose those? Propose someone to second that? Councillor Meek, sorry, brain dead at the beginning of the meeting. All those in favour? Okay, 4.4, Golf from the View. Councillor Argent to propose that. Someone to second that? Councillor Payne, all those in favour? That's carried. Planning and Highways, our chair's not with us. Councillor Borman proposes that. Councillor Payne seconds that. Those in favour? And also the Planning Highways on the 24th of February. Proposed, seconded the same way. Those in favour? And on the 17th of March, same again. Proposed, seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much. We now move on to item 5, which is the Mayor's update report. In previous meetings, I've moved on very quickly over the Mayor's report, but tonight is my final report as Mayor to a full council meeting. Now, tonight's report, as circulated, was taken up mainly with the defibrillator charity project. I know this report is another one of the long reports from the Mayor, but it's worth reading this time because the details are included about automatic external defibrillators, the publicly accessible ones in your wards, and also shows areas that don't have defib coverage. Now, CCAM, if they were to be called, the 999 call, will only direct callers to the nearest defib if it's within 400 metres. Now, the Mayor's charity the Mayor's charity in my first half of my second and final year as Mayor was the Mayor's Charity Initiative, which enabled charities not-for-profits who took part to raise between $9,500 and $10,500 for themselves on the basis of what they raised, they kept. Now, the DFIB project completes my Mayor's charity work. I do want to record my thanks to the many volunteers who worked hard for the charity projects in both half years. I want to express my thanks to the charities, service organisations and not-for-profits who have joined in. Does anyone wish to ask questions about the Mayor's report? Okay, would someone like to propose and second that the recommendation to note the contents? Councillor Payne, you're proposing that. Councillor Honeyman seconding that. All those in favour? Thank you, that's carried. Then we go to item 6. Do we have a Young Mayor's update report? No? Okay, we'll go on from that. Item 7, which is Town Council Working Group reports. Are there any reports to take? No. Item 8, outside body representative reports. Any reports to take? Councillor Meek from our microphone, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a report from the Seaford Head Nature Reserve outside body, which is basically the Seaford Head Local Nature Reserve Management Committee, which is a bit of a mouthful. But anyway, there was a meeting on Monday which Councillor Cash and I attended. Normally the town clerk comes, but he was on holiday, so couldn't. But he did send a report to that committee, which went through, and they acknowledged. Thank you for that. The Ranger Sarah Quantrill from Sussex Wildlife Trust reported that in spite of still working with some COVID restrictions over the winter and early spring months, work has progressed well with good volunteer members in both the local group and the South Downs National Park group. Much had been achieved this autumn and winter. As well as the usual ride and glade maintenance and litter removal, volunteers did a considerable amount of path clearance. They had received many positive comments from visitors. They have also continued to work cooperatively with the golf course staff and could offer advice to help increase the biodiversity on the course. Visitor numbers have been high over this period, and a number of health and safety issues have caused concern and were discussed. These included the need for toilets at South Hill Barn, as the area was being impacted by wild facilities, which was bad for nature and bad for visitors. The merits of composting toilets were discussed, and maybe that's something we could think about. Litter collection and disposal problems have increased. There have been litter sweeps by volunteers, but this is really outside the remit of the Nature Reserve, which is really only to address the biodiversity and nature conservancy of the site. Work was also needed on the Hope Gap steps and access gate, where the access gate is particularly falling to pieces, but the bottom of the steps are also fairly dodgy. However, the most worrying concern discussed was the increasing number of visitors putting themselves in danger of being caught by incoming tides between Hope Gap and the Coast Guard cottages. Carolyn McCourt, the permanent resident of the Coast Guard cottages, reported that she's had to rescue people on numerous occasions who had got cut off by a rising tide when trying to access the beach from Hope Gap. She has to help them up through her garden in order to reach safety. She suggests that at some point there could be a serious incident and that perhaps we should think about measures to regulate in some way how visitors use this stretch of the coast. A volunteer group is being formed to begin work on restoring the dew pond next to South Hill Barn with Seaford Natural History Society. The management group are currently working on a first draft of a long-term vision for our important Clifftop Reserve and its surrounding areas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Meek. Any questions to Councillor Meek? No? Okay, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a report from the Seaford Head Golf Club Committee. They've just recently held their AGM where they've elected their officers for the next 12 months. They also revised their constitution and the rules for playing some of the holes on the golf course. A lot of it went over my head, but there you are, not being a golfer. That's strange, that, isn't it? I'm in the golf club committee and I'm not a golfer, but there you go. They also asked me to pass on their thanks to the officers of the Town Council for their prompt support in putting up the boards in the view. That's the name boards of all the past captains and things like that. They were very pleased that they were able to do that before they AGM, so thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brown. Any other outside body representatives? No, don't see any. Okay, thank you. Okay, we move on to item 9. And I understand we have a report from a county councillor that's been given to our town clerk.
Thank you, Chair. That's correct. Yeah, Councillor Adeniji, who sent his apologies for this meeting, has asked me to do a brief update tonight. As some councillors may well have noticed from the local press, for example, but East Sussex County Council recently issued a press release about Talon Parade. So I'm just going to cover the main points of that press release now. It says that they've met with the owners of Talon Parade and their project manager to look at the need for scaffolding and plans for the building and were given assurances that the building work is on track to start shortly. In the meantime, they've agreed to fund some improvements to the footway in Saxon Lane and advertising hoardings for those businesses affected by the recent partial road and footpath closure. However, what East Sussex are saying very clearly is before renewing the licensing for the scaffolding, that this will be done before the licence is renewed, but they've also gone on to say that the licence has only been renewed on a rolling 6-month basis, and that the owners need to provide a schedule of work and also a communications plan, which includes updating Seaford Town Council on what they're doing and what they're planning to do. East Sussex County Council will continue to work with the owners to ensure the scaffolding does not remain in place any longer than it needs to. So I think the key points really to notice there are the rolling nature of this arrangement, and that without any works happening, then East Sussex may look to take appropriate action if nothing is happening, based upon a 6-month rolling review. It's also worth noticing that the Town Council are expected to be updated, including in updates, so obviously I'll let councillors know if and when we get those updates. And I think that the rolling arrangement shows, what Councillor Engineer wanted to say was that it shows East Sussex taking the actions that they can and also keeping a close eye on things going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Town Clerk. Any other county or district councillor? Councillor Borman?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a Lewis District Council update. Obviously, Ukraine is very strongly on our minds, and Lewis District Council are working with East Sussex County Council and local organisations, so especially the churches that have got together for Seaford for Ukraine groups to support them, and we're waiting for certain legislation and guidance to come down, but they are working with all these groups together to benefit the Ukrainians that are going to come into our area, whether it's schooling and whether it's homes and whether it's food or anything that they need. Every partnership's working together to try and support these residents.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Borman. Your role as a district councillor, thank you. I think that's as many councillors as we've got here who aren't town councillors, so thank you both. We now move on to item 10, so I'll hand across to our Town Clerk.
Thank you, Chair. So the Town Clerk's report begins on page 13. As ever, I want to thank Georgia for her help in making sure that councillors got all of these papers 2 weekends ahead of this meeting, so I hope that's given you sufficient opportunity to be able to look at most of the papers for the meeting tonight. But I'll take you through some of the key points in the Town Clerk's report. I think they're worth noting. I think it's helpful to be clear with councillors, if you like, what I'm doing, to be frank. But in terms of, I was very clear when I began that there were some key items of work to take forward in the immediate 1 to 2 years that I was in post. And these included managing the ongoing response to the COVID crisis, which we have done successfully throughout, including obviously the latest changes that come in place tomorrow in terms of living with COVID and how we're managing that successfully. I think councillors will be unsurprised to hear that we have had COVID absences recently amongst the staff team and officer team across our council delivery, and so we still need to remain mindful of business continuity risks relating to COVID. Secondly, I'm very grateful to my RFO to my right, your left, for all the work that her team is doing with my full support and the full support of all the officer team around increasing the level of the town's general reserve, and that work has been crucial, successful so far, with more work to do. Thirdly, taking forward the building of Martello toilets, and councillors will be aware that we recently issued the tender for potential builders on the site to make their submissions to us. We've had a very strong level of interest in that. Once we have those submissions in, we'll then know the timetable for the actual build to happen in 2022. Fourthly, enacting the results of the review of the Town Council's assets. We had this at 2 full council meetings during the summer of 2021, and the recommendations of that group have been taken forward, and for example, more work going on with green groups in the town around use of community spaces and ongoing negotiations with some key groups in the town to help take that forward. And finally, work to maximise the financial returns the Town Council can achieve at the View. I think that's very timely and to have this on your minds now. And I think it's fair to say significant progress has been made, but at the same time, work on the situation at View, we couldn't maybe do all the steps we might want to during COVID, during the COVID restrictions, certainly. But now those restrictions have come to the end. I briefed the last meeting of the Golf and the View Committee, and it's, as a result of that, set up a new working group with myself and 5 councillors to identify how best the Town Council takes things forward regarding the View. I'm grateful to those councillors for arranging to meet so promptly, and the first meeting of this working group is tomorrow night on the 31st of March. There's some work for that group to do. There's quite a lot of things to look at, as I'm sure you might imagine. But they will then be in a position to make recommendations to the Golf Review Committee and through them full council. And the crucial message is that meanwhile business as usual is maintained at the View while we're undertaking any of this work. So those, I suppose, I think are the key pieces of work for the period up until now. But as well as that, there's other operational updates to give you. Firstly, I'm grateful to Councillor Borman for the points about Ukraine. And we're all aware of the terrible events taking place in that country, and as a town council, we're doing what we can. We've moved closely to put an appropriate message of support forward. We're flying the Ukrainian flag, as many of you will have seen, and we're acting as a source of support and signposting to official schemes and charities offering support, including Homes for Ukraine scheme and the DEC, Disaster Emergency Committee, Ukrainian Humanitarian Appeal. We've also keeping councillors informed about local work and our town informed about local work, including the group we've heard about this evening, Seafood for Ukraine. And I'm attending the meetings of that group, and they're making sure all councillors and through our media channels, the wider town, are aware of any work going on and be as coordinated as we can in any support we can give for the people of Ukraine at this time. The rest of the report sets out the progress made against the 14 or 15 priorities that I set for my work for this current municipal year. So I shall take those updates as read, if that's okay. So I hope that gives councillors a good view of some of the key things that are happening. I'm happy to take any questions or comments before we note the report. Thank you.
If you've got questions, could you raise a hand? I can call you to a microphone. Don't see anybody signalling. Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I just say at 1.4, the 5 councillors, can we know who the 5 councillors are? Are they from the View, Golf and View Committee?
Yeah, the Golf and the View Committee appointed the 5 councillors to the meeting. We'd recommended that 3 of the 5 seats were set, which was the chair of the Golf and the View Committee, the vice chair of the Golf and the View Committee, and the chair of the FNGP Committee, given the work this committee had to do. And everyone there was consensus about that being sensible. Then the Golf and the View then appointed 2 further councillors, who are councillors Webb and Everton, to that committee.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Mayor. 3.11 talks about working with East Sussex County Council to sort out the parking and everything around the seafront and the town.
Yes.
There is an SLR meeting which you, as town clerk, invited us to submit questions.
Yes.
When is the meeting?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, East Sussex County Council have had to rearrange the meeting. So it was originally due to take place last week, but it's now being rearranged to a date in April. So all of the agenda, I'm really grateful to councillors for the feedback they provided, and all of that has been passed on to be included in the agenda of the meeting when it does happen.
Is there any, Adam, is there any opportunity to add something to that agenda now? It's been a bit delayed, or have you taken enough on board?
I'd be happy to consider additions if you want to send them to me.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions to the Mayor about the report, to the Town Clerk about the report? It's a Honeyman.
you, Mr. Mayor. It was actually on 3.11 as well. It says about a paper we brought to the Planning and Highways Committee to look at options for the future regarding the parking. Will that then come to full council if any decisions are made on parking?
Yes, it'd be a normal arrangement, Councillor Honeyman, where committees would make recommendations to full council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, okay. Councillor Meek.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if it's appropriate to say this at this point. I'm just noticing maybe I just feel at some point during this meeting it's not been agendaed. I don't know that the Town Council has taken note of the fact that we've lost our plastic-free Seaford lead in the form of Claire Sumners, who sadly died recently. And I just wondered if it ought to be acknowledged at this meeting that we do heed that loss and acknowledge the huge amount of work she did for us to get the plastic-free status that we did achieve in this town. And I just didn't see it anywhere. I haven't seen it on the website. So I just would like to say, I don't know if you'd like to say anything, Rodney, just in further reference to that, or maybe it was going to come up at some other time. I just feel it's appropriate perhaps now.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Meek. There's been a Seaford Town Council press statement about the passing of Claire Sumner, and we as councillors and officers who want to be part of the summer celebration that will happen in Seaford. As I understand it, the arrangements at the crematorium and at the White Lion on Friday are really fully taken up by friends and close friends and family. So we've got no. I would have represented the council if there was an opportunity, but they are, they clearly friends and family have a priority. If you wanted us to, we could have a minute's silence now, remembering Claire, if that's what you want to propose. Just enough to acknowledge it, yes? Yeah, she was clearly, in a press statement I made, they said she was a kind of champion and an advocate and someone with so much energy and has made such a difference to our town in terms of the town council's plastic-free strategies and her work in terms of enabling people to change lifestyle as well as it's not simply the litter picking, it's lifestyle changes she's brought about. So she will be greatly missed. And as we've said in Town Council press releases, that we will work to ensure that her legacy is that this continues and is even more successful, building on what she's achieved. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the Town Clerk's report? I think could someone move that we accept the recommendation to note the contents? Councillor Payne, Councillor Borman, those in favour? Okay, that's so moved. We go to item 11, which is now on page 18. Now, to move into this item, I need to propose that we suspend our standing orders to enable Peter Cousins to speak to the meeting. I move that. Someone second that for me. Councillor Borman, those in favour? That's so moved. Town Clerk, how do you want to take this? To introduce it first?
There's two parts. So Peter's update first, and then we'll restore standing orders to debate the proposal about plaques. But I'm very grateful to Peter to come in this evening. Welcome. Please talk to us.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me along. So firstly, I'll introduce myself. My name is Peter Cousin. I'm the Commercial Manager for South Downs National Park Authority, and within that remit, Seven Sisters Country Park comes under my area. So I've been in the organisation since November 2020, so I was brought in specifically with the idea of my main focus being getting Seven Sisters Country Park set up and running. So as you may be aware, South Downs National Park Authority became owners of Seven Sisters Country Park on the 31st of July last year. It was previously owned by East Sussex County Council, so the first 8 months we were negotiating the handover of that, which finally went through 31st of July. Since the acquisition, we have begun our phase 1 project. So this project is now in total going to be a £2.6 million investment in the site. And the main focus of the work at Seven Sisters is to make it better for people and better for nature. Alongside that, we want to do it in a way that leads the way in adapting conservation for climate change. So Seven Sisters is a site that is very sensitive to climate change and is already seeing the effects of climate change. We want to show how conservation can be changed and evolved to better make the site more resilient to those changes. So the £2.6 million investment that we're currently making, the majority of that is about improving the visitor experience, which hasn't been invested in quite a long time. So one thing that is happening immediately is the visitor centre is being put onto a single floor to improve accessibility. New interpretation is going in, new retail furniture and things like that. The biggest change for the visitor centre is we will be open every day except Christmas each year. So that's a move from it being volunteer run, so it was open when the volunteers were able to do so, to now always having a member of staff present 364 days a year. Next door to the visitor centre, we will have a new grab and go offer. So this is about doing takeaway. So we still have the cafe around the corner based on the site who are doing a sit-down catering offer, and then there'll be the grab and go for those who want to just quickly get something. The general rule we work to is there's usually one catering outlet per 60,000 people. Our current estimates is that there's about 1 million visits a year to that site. So there's not been sufficient, and that's caused a lot of queues and a lot of delays for visitors. The next thing, which hopefully will be open in about 10 days or so, is our new toilet block. So our new toilet block, so previously there were, I think, 5 or 6, there were 6 cubicles in the toilet facilities. We're now going up to 25 cubicles, 2 of those being accessible and 1 of those being a changing places toilet. So once again, improving the accessibility of the site and the quality of the visitor experience. Alongside all of that, we are also making improvements for our offices and things like that, and Natural England will be working in those offices as well, so trying to create a conservation hub for the area where we can all work in close proximity and therefore move conservation on at a faster pace. Now, alongside all of this, we are also doing work at Foxholes, just slightly down the park. Unfortunately, once we started work, we found that one of the walls there had no foundations, so that work has been massively delayed as we need to underpin all our walls. Therefore, we're not going to finish at Foxholes until probably October, November time, and opening it to the public at the end of the year around Christmas. So there we're putting in a new accommodation, so that's holiday accommodation, so that's 3 different levels. We'll have a campsite, we'll have a camping barn, those particularly focused to school and education groups, and then we have holiday cottages as well, but trying to make them affordable and accessible to most families. So dates for opening, we're hoping to have most of the visitor-facing area at Exceed open in the next month. So by the 30th of April is our current hope. That is as long as we don't experience any further delays in our buildings. Alongside all of this, of course, as well as the people side, we have the nature side. So we've already made quite a few changes to the landscape management. We've created a landscape management plan in consultation with a lot of partners, and that we're starting to put into place. The big changes we've seen is a change in the way that we graze the site. The chalk grassland was not in the best condition, so the chalk grassland was becoming overrun with tall grass, so we put cattle grazing and pony grazing to get that under control. Whilst the semi-improved grasslands, so those are areas which have been ploughed previously, we've taken grazing off of that to allow it to rest. We've already seen huge benefits from doing this. So you might have seen in the news that we had 5 short-eared owls come to the site, which haven't been seen there before. And back in the autumn, our numbers of wading birds were the highest we've seen for at least 20 years. So we're already starting to see the benefits in just 8-9 months, which has been really good to see. We'll be recruiting a lot of staff and volunteers to the site. So we in total will have 20 members of staff in the next few weeks, hopefully, working on the site. That's 8 full-time and 12 part-time members of staff, equivalent to about 13 or 14 full-time staff. We'll then be, once we've done that, once we're through Easter, we will be recruiting for volunteers as well. whether that's visitor engagement, whether that's giving guided walks, or helping us out in the car parks, lots of different things, or volunteering with the rangers to help improve the landscape of the site. Alongside all of this, we have a lot of plans for the future. So we're hoping to improve the facilities for education, working with the Sussex Wildlife Trust and Plumpton College. We're putting in a new footpath this winter, hoping to resurface a lot of the paths that have become muddy and degraded, and then make further improvements to accessibility with the possible acquisition of off-road mobility scooters, and also repairs to our 2 dew ponds so they supply better for nature. I'll now take any questions you may have.
If councillors would like to ask questions, if you could indicate. Councillor Borman's first. Councillor Cash to follow that.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, the amount of visitors you say you have to the site already, and with improved facilities, improved education facilities, that means you're going to have more members or visitors to the site every year. What are you doing to discourage people driving to the site? Are you doing anything to encourage other things that are greener or anything like that?
Yeah.
Perhaps we'll have Councillor Dunn's question as well, and then you take them together.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question was, is opposite the visitor centre where you're, because me and my husband drive past there every day, so we know what's going on. And I read about it in the paper, obviously, that you'd taken it over. Opposite the visitor centre is the car park near where the meanders are. That belongs to yourself, I understand that. That's your car park. But on the opposite side, where the existing cafe is now, there's parking behind that. But is that not belonging to the... That's Friston... Foresters, isn't that the Forestry Commission car park? It gets a bit confusing.
I can explain the car park, that's fine. So
Thank you.
Maybe I'll go to that one first because it's quite a simple one. So yes, that car park there is actually ours. There is one about 500 metres up the road, which is the Friston Forest car park. Yeah, so, but that, it is very confusing. So our boundary is at the end of that car park, essentially, and then it becomes Friston Forest. Not a problem. On the first question, yes, we are very aware that the site already has challenges around car parking. I think since we've taken ownership of the site, we've realised just how major an issue that is. Even in January, we regularly hit capacity in the car parks. So we have no desire to increase footfall and people coming by car. The main purpose of the building work was to improve the visitor facilities, not to drive more visitors, but that, I admit, may be the result. Currently, since we've taken ownership of the site, we've never been at capacity if we include the car park 500 metres up the road. So a lot of what we're doing is managing the traffic on site, which was not previously done. So now we're actively sending people, when we hit capacity, putting up signs and having staff sending people to the next car park, which so far has yet to hit capacity. However, as you rightly say, ultimately we'd rather people just didn't come by car. So we're working very closely with Brighton Buses. So it's obviously already a very well-used bus route. So I'm reliably informed by them that it is the most requested stop from Brighton Station. So we're working in partnership with them. We're planning on putting on discounts for people who come by bus in the shops and cafes. We already are very lucky that we have a fantastic service. We're also looking to potentially raise money to create, so as an authority, we're looking to create a tourist bus in the summer that links ourselves, Seaford, Newhaven, Drusillas, and other major tourist attractions, potentially even Lewis as well, and do a loop to try to get another bus service that goes more inland. We're also working with the Cookmere buses as well, but they, of course, less regular, so they're not often the way that people access the site. We are then hoping as well to go, we're talking to the bus companies and also local councils and transport hubs. Ideally, what we would like to see longer term is when you arrive in Eastbourne, potentially Seaford, New Haven stations, is that straight away you are directed to where you can get then the bus to get to the site, so that we at least start to make more and more people aware as they go through town centres that actually it is an option. And also we're putting out regular social media posts and things like that on our website as that this is the preferred option. And as soon as we hit capacity on busy days as well, we put up notices on all our social media and website saying, please don't come by car, please use the bus wherever possible. We've also spoken to East Sussex and other partners about longer term looking at producing a cycle trail that goes all the way from Seaford, linking with us, and then onto Eastbourne, completely off-road. But that is going to be a long-term thing. But we're starting to have the conversations with landowners along that stretch to see if that is possible.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Don't see those. So, Peter, thank you very much for a comprehensive and very interesting report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we need to return to our standing orders. Someone proposed that we bring standing orders back in. Councillor Borman, someone second that. Councillor Payne, those in favour. Okay, we're back into standing orders again. Now we come back to the report and the recommendations of the report, which are to agree to the request to install 3 new interpretation plaques, giving delegated authority to officers to confirm the final locations. Anyone want to speak to this?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to this, Rodney, as the author of the report. I'm very grateful, though, to my partners at the National Park Authority for the information that's informed this report. As councillors would have seen, there's an important new project called We See You Now across this part of the National Park, looking to install new interpretation plaques for a more interactive experience, but based upon a broad range of topics. And the vision of South Downs National Park is to have a whole range of these plaques, but 3 of them would fall within land owned by Seaford Town Council. So this report is to basically request the permission of councillors for work to proceed on the 3 interpretation panels that would be on the land that we actually own. Attached to the report is a summary of the project and the benefits that the panels would bring, plus also information, some technical information you need about them in terms of how they'll be put up and what they'll be looked after and all those sorts of things. So I hope that gives councillors an indication of what's being proposed and gives you the information you need. Again, happy to take questions or comments before asking councillors to agree to the plaques proceeding. Thank you.
Okay, so questions on agenda 11, report 19821. Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Chair. I do fully support these. I've seen them in other forests and national parks and everything, and they are a great thing. My only concern is on the appendix on page 22 that the landowner would be expected to report any issues in terms of damage or in the event of failure of the NFC or the QR tags. Does that mean we're going to have to spend officer time in order to go and check that these are working over the lifetime of it? Or are we just going to rely on members of the public to make complaints to us or to the National Park?
That's a great question, Councillor Borman. Thank you. We discussed this. I think that we do, as the officer team, Tony and his team, especially Bob, do go around and regularly inspect all the places that we own. So their view is that bringing these 3 in should not add significantly to their workload because they would expect to be going around sites reasonably regularly. Of course, yes, it could be if damage is done between those inspections, the public will say, oi, what's going on with that one? But I think we can incorporate this work within the work that we normally do. That means we may not be inspecting them, daily or weekly or anything like that, but we would make sure it's part, because I say we go and look at all the measures along the coast, along Seaford Head, for example, as well. So it's something that we think we can manage.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No. Someone like to propose the Cash? Someone to second that recommendation? Councillor Brown. Those in favour? That's carried. Okay, thank you. We're now on to page 23, which is agenda item 12. We recognise the chair of the Seaford Town Football Club in our gallery.
Tony unfortunately has COVID, so I'm afraid councillors are going to have to keep listening to me for a bit longer, I'm afraid. So I'm going to go take the main points of this report with, while Tony, as I say, has COVID at the moment. The good news is that it's mild and he's not too bad, and he will be back very soon, but he's still testing positive at the moment, so we didn't think it was sensible for him to attend this evening. So again, within the report, the purpose of the report to approve, subject to 1 year trial period, the request from Seaford Town Football Club to take on maintenance responsibilities for the football pitch at the Crouch. The motion cover the points that would need to be agreed for that to happen. As you can probably tell from the report, Tony has already been in discussions with the football club about this, so this has not come as a surprise to us. And they've been holding necessary discussions so that this may be possible. And the report and the motion basically requests that councillors give delegated authority to Tony and his team to complete, along with the chair of community services, who again is aware of this issue, to complete the necessary agreement after the trial period. We're also grateful to Tom and his team who've sent some information in Appendix 1 to help councillors understand what's envisaged here, the reason why they think this is necessary, and what they're proposing to do in taking on the maintenance themselves. The motions cover the financial implications of that, and basically involving us not spending so much money to Lewes District Council, who employ ID Verdi, but actually allow Seaford Town Council to use those resources themselves for the maintenance of the pitch. I hope that gives councillors a summary. Happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone with questions for this? Councillor Payne.
It says 4,750 to maintain the pitch.
Yes.
But is that not the whole of the Crouch?
No, it's for this particular
Just the pitch?
area. Yeah.
So the other people will then maintain the rest of the Crouch?
I mean, I'm going to say basically yes. I mean, basically, Tony's also, in discussions with LDC as well, so there'll be clarity about who's going to do what. But as far as Tony's calculations are concerned, this is the appropriate amount to fund STFC to be able to do that.
So again, we're paying to maintain the pitch?
Yeah, because at the moment we pay ID Verdi.
I've got a second question. Because it says on the second bit, there's really a little sign saying the pitch is paid for and maintained by Seaford Town Council, Seaford Town Football Club. Should it also not say on Seaford Town Council, if we're actually paying for it? And the fourth paragraph of the Appendix 1.
Oh, up in the Appendix 1, sorry, yes. I'm sorry, can you ask your question again, Councillor? I'm not quite with you.
It says that the pitch is paid for and maintained by Seaford Town Football Club, but should it not also say Seaford Town Council, seeing as we're actually paying for it to be done?
You mean in terms of the signs? You'd like some acknowledgement of us on the signs? That's what you're saying? Okay, we can ask them for that.
Do you want me to suspend standing
Yes,
orders
we
again
should
to let
suspend
the chair
standing orders.
speak?
I think that might be helpful.
Okay, someone proposed that, Councillor Brown. Someone second that, Councillor Borman. Those in favour of suspending standing orders again? That's carried. Tom, would you like to come to the microphone?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to explain, so the signage itself is to help the public understand that the football club is going to be participating to those costs. So the costs themselves are going to be in the region of £8,000 to £900 a year, £8,000 to £9,000 a year. So the council's current spend is going to stay the same, but it's going to be proportioned to the private contractors. Then we're going to top it up to pay the rest. And then the idea was to have the sign so that the public would then understand that the football club's participating in those costs. And then the idea was then to have a logo in the corner saying supported by Seaford Town Council. But obviously the wording of that sign is more than, we can have a conversation over that, that's no problem at all.
Right, thank you. And I think the point is worth making that in order to have a good standard football pitch, clearly there's more time and energy you need to put into it than a general contract. But also we have to encourage the dog owners to exercise their dogs around the outside of the pitch, not across the middle of it. Otherwise, all the money spent on having a premium surface ends up pitted with dogs making speed across the pitch. Councillor Borman. And then should we bring our standing orders back in at this point? We'll wait, okay. Right.
Thank you, Chair. On Appendix 1, the letter from Tom, obviously he says that they understand that the land is public land and they don't have a right to tell people not to go on it. This is a football pitch as well. This is something that's not just for Seaford Town Football Club, it's for their academies, it's for the younger, the older. Is there any way, being Seaford Town Council owned land, that we can ensure and literally fence it off so people cannot access the football? Because although you say people may respect it if it's maintained better, are they? And they could be, as I said, £8,000 to £9,000 a year instead of our £4,500 a year. But is it going to change people's views on dog walkers and everything else? And actually, shouldn't we maybe be doing more to protect the pitch itself and the club for the future?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Borman. Councillor Dunn.
Thank you. Actually, I'm following on from what Councillor Borman has just said, and it's obviously what's in the letter that has been written, the Appendix 1 been written to Tony, regarding the vandalism that the club suffers and the lack of respect from many dog walkers. Now, I'm a dog owner myself, travel all over the country. I would like to, I don't know if I can make this a proposal or whether the council could look into it, because it is our land. It probably would have to be a bylaw, but I think we should make the crouch that it can be dog friendly, but dogs have to be in the crouch on a lead. They're not allowed to be off the lead. That would then prevent any misuse of the pitch. We've also got a children's playground in there, and we also have the bowling green that we have to manage and maintain to a high standard. Why can we not make the crouch dog friendly but on the lead, just like we've got on the beach? There's many parks in Eastbourne and surrounding our area that do the same when they have need to respect an area like we do with the football club. And I don't know if I should make that a proposal tonight or whether it could be investigated.
Let's hear Tom's response first. Also occurs to me, when there was football for accessible football, there was some fencing going on to make sure the children would stay within the boundaries of the pitch rails, and I wonder whether that could just be improved to the level where it was obviously not encouraged to get people beyond those pitch boundaries. Tom?
Yeah, no, most definitely. Well, firstly, thank you very much for both your support, because it is greatly appreciated. It is something that the club is constantly fighting against, and it's something that is very disheartening that every time we see dog walkers running on the pitch and stuff like that. The crouch itself, again, a dog owner and a dog sitter, very much a dog lover, there's more than enough space around the outside of the pitch for dogs to be exercised. That's what the frustration is from our point of view. It's not the usage of dogs in the crouch. It's an open space. We want the public to be able to enjoy that space to an extent, and there is ample space around the outside. I have put a 7-page proposal together for Tony as a crouch development plan. A part of that was to potentially build a dog park in the crouch itself. So if you imagine we've got the football pitch, then you've got almost like an L shape. There's a big plot of land in the corner there that would be more than enough space for an exercise dog park. Because what we found is the dogs that are exercising on the pitch, they tend to either be nervous dogs or dogs that would run away. So our fencing, as much as that was for football, it seems to have been abused now for sort of nervous dogs. So as much as we've tried to do something good, it's kind of backfired in our own faces because we're trying to do something good. So the idea would be to build a dog park within the Crouch Gardens, but also, like you said, is about a fencing around the football pitch itself. So something that we really struggle with as a football club is policing our boundaries. So as we all know, there's the low flint wall at the end. There's plenty of sort of access points. We've got 5 different access points to the Crouch. Now, we've only got a certain amount of volunteers. We can't man every entrance, so we do get some people come and watch the football that might jump a fence and not pay. It does also, as the club grows, there will become a safety issue on us not being able to manage our borders very well. But I have put together a proposal for Tony that will include a fence that would go around the pitch, still leave the ample space around the outside to exercise the dogs, and then still give free flow and access in that area. But the idea would be to say, when you're in this fence bit, please put your dogs on the lead, but when you're outside the fence, you still have the freedom to run around as much as you can. So you still have the full access of the park, so it's still a public facility, but you would hope that a nice fence that went around the outside, pretty much where our stand ends, I think it's about 10 foot back from the pitch itself as a whole boundary, would then give us an enclosed football ground, give turnstile and open entrances so people can still walk through when football isn't being played. And then the idea then is that we get a secure football area, the town still gets the place to exercise the dogs, there's a secure place for nervous dogs that they can exercise, and then also helps the club to grow. Something else I did put in the report as well is, at our standard of football, it's because we play county level football. I looked at our league and the league above, which we're potentially looking to be promoted into this season, all being well in the next few games. But we actually have the worst ground out of 32 teams in those two leagues. Every team in our standard of football has an enclosed ground with proper, like, gated turnstile entrances. I think Hailsham's a very good example. There's a big park. Then you have the football pitch, which is segregated off the outside with a hedgerow that fences it off. That's the sort of thing we were thinking about, but still allowing the public to be able to walk through, whereas something like Hailsham, you can't go in there unless it's football. Whereas I think I don't want to get to the stage where people can't use the park and the entrances. I'd like it to still be open and still the public to be able to enjoy the space. But like you said, I'd like it to have a very good fence that then has defined entrances, 2 entrances, so you can still use every part of the park, exercise the dogs on the outside, lead on the inside. So hopefully it's one of those sort of solutions that not everyone's going to be happy with it because it's going to be a fence and not many people like fences, but it will solve a lot of problems for a lot of people. And I think building the dog park will then give something back that we might have taken away. And again, with the dog park, it will be a community run and community funded project, so it wouldn't be something that the council would have to pay for. The football club's more than happy to manage that community project and raise the funds needed, and then obviously get volunteers in to do the actual labour. So Tony has that report, and I believe he's going to be proposing that to everybody soon.
Okay, thank you. Just conscious that Tom has made a great improvement during his time as chairman of the club in terms of how things have improved in your time, so well done for that. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully support this motion. I think that the football club will probably take more care of the land, and they've got a vested interest in keeping it nice and tidy. However, I've got some reserves about the equipment. The sum mentioned here is £4,750, and you can't maintain that piece of grass with your ordinary electric garden mower. You need some specialist equipment. Specialist equipment needs maintenance, and it also needs some secure storage. I'm not sure that there's any secure storage down at the football club that would safeguard this equipment. So perhaps...
What I'm thinking is that the appendix says that they need the arrangement for the grass improvement to begin from the 1st of June. We've heard about a report coming forward in terms of a larger project. Whether we could simply accept what's in front of us tonight and then be ready for this larger project to come forward to a future meeting. I wouldn't want to delay until another meeting when we could actually get started on this. That the £4,750 the council's already spending is then part of your £8,000 that you would be investing in the pitch, and then we come back to a subsequent meeting with the larger report. Yes, Councillor. Yes, you can answer, Councillor Brown. Yeah. Yes.
So our private contractors will have the machinery. So you're completely correct. You couldn't mow and flatten the surface with the equipment we've got. We fundraise to get our own sit-ride-on mower, so we do some volunteer maintenance ourselves at the moment, even with the council contract that's in at the place at the moment. So we are doing some work ourselves, but the private contractor that we will get in would have their own machinery and bigger, more professional facilities, which are obviously secured off-site.
Okay, thank you. So can we move forward on that basis then? We've moved to Councillor Cash.
I'm completely in favour of us doing this with Tom and trying to help him to improve the pitches. They do terrific work there. and that would be a great thing to see them doing. I'm not very happy about that being tied in with a field for nervous dogs. I would like to consider that as a separate issue altogether. I don't think we can start setting aside areas of different fields for certain, dogs who are doing this, running about, dogs who aren't nervous, or other facilities that aren't to do with football. I think we need to deal with this as a separate issue. If people who've got nervous dogs want to come forward with a project, fair enough, but I would like to separate it entirely from the nervous dogs issue.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cash. I think we move to these 4 recommendations now. And can we take these as one part, one group? Someone proposed we take them together. Councillor Payne, agreeing that. Councillor Borman, okay. Let's vote to take them together, then we'll vote to take them. To take them together, yes, vote. Okay, now let someone propose we take them. Councillor Borman, Councillor Payne. The 4 are recommended, are now proposed and seconded. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Now we go on to page 26. Oh, in fact, we need to put our standing orders back in place, don't we? Yes, so someone proposed we put standing orders back. Councillor Payne, Councillor Borman, those in favour. Standing orders are back in place. Right, we're now back at page 26, Fields in Trust. Jeff, you're presenting for this.
Good evening, everyone. The report's quite straightforward and hopefully clear. What we're saying in summary is on this issue that it appears to be a good idea, provided the restrictions in whatever deed is offered to us by the trustees doesn't restrict the council's powers to make necessary improvements going forward. Obviously, in this situation, the council landowner shouldn't voluntarily give up the power to deal with its land without good reason, but we think that overall the status that designation as a field in trust will give is a good enough reason at least to go ahead with the next stage of the process that's explained in the report, is to negotiate with the trustees of Fields in Trust regarding the contents of whatever deed of dedication they come up with, and take that to the council once it's been negotiated to see whether it's acceptable, with appropriate advice. So it only commits us to that one step forward, and so the recommendations are pretty straightforward. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, of course.
Okay, Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, just changed glasses. Regarding 3.2, where it mentions that Lewes District Council were not happy to go ahead and do the 2 sites of Walmer Road and the Downs Leisure Centre. They weren't happy to do that regarding further development of sites. Is there any way that, number one, we as a council could appeal that decision, and 2, can the land not be looked into to see if there's covenants on them that would not allow them to do any heavy development, that they were actually left to Seaford Town Council in perpetuity? I mean, is there any way forward on this? Because that really does upset me that they won't be prepared to put those into Fields in Trust as well. Because we, as a council, because I worked on the neighbourhood plan for over 3.5 years, and I know that we're under the required green space that is suitable for a town of our size. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I think when, as you'll know, I think you were chair when this was brought up by Community Services Committee, or certainly were aware that it was brought up originally just over a year ago by Community Services Committee, and they added this request to the District Council really for the sake of completeness, that the Town Council was in control of 3 of the 5 eligible sites, if you like, and District Council in control of the other 2 in the town. So it would be neat and tidy if all 5 could be designated together, good for the town. But we could only, as a town council, obviously request the District Council to do it. District Council have discussed it both with the town clerk and myself over the last year. Their view, which they're perfectly entitled to take, is that existing planning policy and the desire to sort of have a free hand, if you like, over what they do on their land, which, as I say, is understandable. You know, a landowner giving up rights over its land, whether it's public land or not, is quite a big step. As I said, in this case, it's balanced out, in our view, as town council officers, by the status that we and the town obtain from having these 3 areas designated. The district council are quite entitled to take the other view. They own the land. They want to do as they wish with it. You know, if they want to build a pavilion on it for sports, then, you know, they want to have a free hand at that rather than go to another body to check whether it's okay. So that's really the sum total of it. I don't think there's anything more to read in to the district council's response other than that. And as a town council, we can't require them to do otherwise.
Okay, Councillor Boreham and then Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to clarify about, obviously, building on it in future. So with the likes of the Salts, if the cricket club wanted to rebuild theirs, or with the Crouch, especially with the football club, as they said about going up the leagues, that they actually would require better facilities. What would Land in Trust, especially the Crouch, put in to maybe building better facilities for the football club or for any other club, or even the Salts Cafe if we needed to rebuild that? How would that have an effect if we were on a Land in Trust?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Payne, if you'd ask, same question. Right, Jeff, that's two of the same.
Well, we will know the detail, what they require, when we start to negotiate with them, if we start to negotiate with them. But I imagine that they would be happy with reasonable improvements and developments which enhance the facilities, either directly, you know, the sports facilities, or indirectly through providing cafes and storage facilities and things like that. But what they might not be so keen on is, say, a mixed development which takes up part of the existing area that's dedicated to sports facilities but is not related to sports use. Not that the town council would envisage that probably, but they just want to ensure that any development on there is directly or indirectly related to or ancillary to the main use for sports and recreation and leisure, rather than to, say, take advantage of the space there to make an income-raising development which is not associated with the sports use itself. I imagine that's where they would draw the line, because that's their main objective. And I don't think it's likely that the town council would want to go in for that sort of development, but we will find out exactly what their sort of requirements are when we see the standard deed of dedication that they would want us to enter into. We would discuss that with them if we needed any more information, and bring all the information to full council before any formal decision was taken.
Mr. Boreham, yep.
Thank you. Just to come back on that, can we then invite, obviously, like the football club and the bowls club and the cricket club and the rugby club to actually be involved in this process once we've got the initial feedings, because it's going to come back to full council? Can we get them involved so they can have a bit of a read over it and a say in it as well, just in case a future plan for them, actually, that it may not agree with them as well, please?
I think it's more aimed at areas which are open for use to the public. I mean, obviously the Crouch is on the list because a significant part of the area is open to the public, or even the football pitch, you know, but obviously not the bowling green. I mean, the Salts is generally open to the public, and Martello Fields, obviously. But yes, I mean, I don't think it would directly affect the users, like the rugby club, the bowls club, but they could be included in the general discussion once we get the details, once we see the whites of their eyes, once we see what they envisage we should agree to. I haven't seen a standard document. There's no standard document available online or on their website. But as I say, so this is a sort of relatively minor step forward. It enables us to say, well, yes, we think it's a good idea. What's involved? And then, you know, we have a good look at that before we agree to anything. And as yes, a good idea perhaps to liaise with the main users of the three areas, or certainly two areas anyway.
Yes, and recommendation 2 does make it clear we're making we would make an application for Fields in Trust, but that the deed of dedication would need to come back to full council. It would be up to us to decide. Applying for it and deciding to do it, it's separate decisions. So I think tonight we're just being asked whether we would apply. Any other questions on this? Councillor Payne?
I thought I read it, but I can't quite see it. What is the advantages of doing this and giving up the land?
It shows to the residents of Seaford that we're pledged to keep this land available for use by the town, by the residents of Seaford, as a sports, recreation and leisure area in perpetuity. In other words, you know, it's like a sort of a commitment to keeping these three areas available to the public at a time when, you know, available land is under great pressure from other forms of development.
I think it is an added protection that it will stay as green space. If you look across the town at the green spaces we no longer have.
But could Lewis not take it off us? If Lewis decided they wanted to build something on those lands, could they not take it off us?
No, well, we own those three sites.
Yeah, but we only own it because...
We only involved Lewis because there were two other sites that they own which sort of complete the list of public sporting and recreation sites within the town.
Right, so but we legally own the places. They can't take it. They can't take it back. No, that's great.
Okay, are we ready to move to a vote on this? Yes. So the recommendations are that we note the contents of the update report and we approve that an application will be made to Fields in Trust status for the three local sites, the Crouch, Saltsbury Recreation Ground and Martello Fields, and that the deeds of dedication for each site will be brought to the full council for approval in due course. So can we take those two together? Or Councillor Brown, you want to speak? You support the recommendations. So propose we take the two together. Councillor Cash, we take the two together. Right, let's vote those two recommendations as one. So these are proposed and seconded. Those in favour? I think that's everybody. That's carried. Nobody's against. So thank you for that. Now we move on to item 14 and waiving financial regulations. Who's talking to this? Our RFO.
As members I'm sure are aware, the golf course has a 5-year replacement programme for its machinery. Is that better? Do you want me to start again? As members are aware, the golf course has a 5-year machinery replacement programme. And what's happened this year is similar to what's happened in previous years. And when you need to buy a piece of this machinery, a specific type of machinery, it's only sold by selected suppliers. So our financial regulations say for this amount of money, you need to get 3 quotations. But what we found is that if you want this particular type of machinery, and it's different every year, but often we have this problem, if you ask another company to quote for it, they won't. So although this machinery is sold all over the country, they've got like a code where they will say, if you want that machinery, you've got to go to your nearest supplier. We're not going to quote against you. So there's 3 pieces of machinery this year, but one of them we've only managed to get 1 quote. So what we're asking basically is to waive financial regulations so that we can accept that 1 quote. That's just for this year. But this is a problem we do often have. So what the second resolution goes on to say, can we amend standing up financial regulations to say that in this sort of circumstances, if officers have this problem, they come and discuss it with myself or the town clerk, and if the reasons are valid and they really can't get 3 quotations, then we will still revert back to the financial regs depending on the amount of money it is. So like, for instance, if it's above a certain amount, we will involve councillors, but we don't have to bring it back to council. Because at the moment, we've had to bring this back to council. It's very, very lucky that the date today, because the prices of these go up on the 1st of April. So if we have to wait months or call an extraordinary meeting, which is not ideal either, it just causes a delay in getting the pieces of equipment. So basically, the financial regs would be changed, as I've just said, where 3 quotes are unobtainable and after the assessment by the RFO or the town clerk, it's found for legitimate reasons, the decision to accept the quote can be approved and we don't need to have finance regs waived. So I'm happy to accept any questions or anything about it. The Appendix 1 shows the contract section of the finance regs. It shows where that paragraph would slip in, and it also shows the table of the approval process. Like, for instance, if it's over 200,000, it's got to come back to council anyway. So it's only for the smaller items.
So that section is on page 34, and it's the new E, I think. That's the section that's underlined. So any questions to our RFO? Councillor Brown, then Councillor Borman. Sorry, Councillor, Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There will be occasions when it's almost impossible to follow regulations exactly, and I think in this case we've got a position here where there's only 1 supplier, nobody else wants to quote. What do we do? So, you know, we've got to bend the rules slightly in this occasion, and I would like to support the recommendation under 11.1E, where 3 quotes are unobtainable after the assessment by RFO and town clerk. I think it's reasonable to do that in this instance, and there'll be further instances that come up in the life of this council.
Okay, that's proposed. Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Chair. I fully understand where you're coming from. When there, especially with golf equipment and maintaining that land, there will be only so many places you can accept it from. So although I accept that, I would actually like it to add that it's in conjunction with the chair of F&GP and the chair of the golf committee, so councillors do kind of oversee things as well. So it's not just officers' decision, because at the end of the day, it is the councillors that run the council, so I'd like to see some councillor input into it. So the chair of F&GP and the chair of the golf committee, because obviously it's going to be the golf equipment that is going to be the main equipment.
Yeah, we have a proposal, we have an amendment.
Can I make a comment, Chair? It's not just for the golf machinery. The changing of the financial regulations would be for anything that this situation occurs with, but we could quite easily put into the financial regs that it's not just myself and the town clerk, that for any level where this happens, that the chair of the relevant committee is consulted as well.
So that means we could, what's on page 34 could have an amendment that they would involve. Sorry? Yeah. And are we accepting we can do that? So that would mean that the underlying piece of page 34 would have an amendment that, Karen, tell me again how that would be? That would be...
So the actual paragraph would say, where 3 quotes are unobtainable and after assessment by the RFO and town clerk in consultation with the chair of the relevant committee, it is found to be for legitimate reasons the decision to accept a quote from those presented can be approved by the RFO in conjunction with the town clerk, or we could put chair of the relevant committee in there as well. It's like repeating it twice, isn't it, really?
Okay, Councillor Foreman, you content with that? Councillor Brown, will you accept that amendment? Yes? Well, so we have a new proposal proposed and seconded then. Yes, you agreeing to that? Okay, those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Now we come back to the recommendations. So we are recommended to waive Section 11.1 of the Financial Regulations enabling the purchase of necessary machinery, and to amend Section 11 of the Financial Regulations to set out in page 2 of this report, with that amendment now incorporated. So someone proposed that. Councillor Payne, Councillor Brown, those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. We're now on to item 15, which is page 39. Now, I've declared an interest on this item. If you want, I don't intend to speak to it, but if you want me not to chair it, then I'm willing to hand across the deputy chair. Do you want me to remain in the chair or pass across to the deputy for this?
Looks like we're happy for you to continue, Chair.
Okay. Carry on? Yep, I don't intend to speak to it. Okay, let's, so this is meeting draft timetable and arrangements. So we're page 39 on to page 52. Someone want to introduce this?
Yeah, I'm going to cover this one. Thank you, Chair. But I'm hugely grateful to Georgia for all the massive amount of work that's gone into the report and the papers that go with it. So thank you, Georgia, for that. There are a few points to cover, so I hope councillors will bear with me while I try and make sure I cover the key points now. There's quite a lot to get across here. As I say, what's before you is a draft 22 to 23 meeting timetable and details of meeting arrangements. We think it's sensible to share these with you now, give the opportunity to debate and reflect on them, and also amend them where you wish to. And then these will then be formally agreed, as is custom and practice, at the annual meeting of the council, which would take place in May. But given that the timeline would start from May, we think it's sensible we actually discuss this tonight. You'll see from the report the recommendations that are to approve the draft 22-23 meeting timetable ahead of it being presented to the full council in the meeting immediately after the annual meeting, and to note secondly note some key points we're making here. I think 2A to E shows us responding to the latest COVID developments and living with COVID. And really, we've done this timetable and also venue suggestions based upon the current government recommendations around living with COVID. So that will be full council meetings held at the View, with Seaford Head School as a backup venue. Committee meetings continue to happen in the council chambers, with the View as a backup venue. Meetings will be video recorded by town council equipment using and uploaded to council's YouTube channel. Meetings will not be live streamed, and there'll be no provision for hybrid meetings under this arrangement. And public participation will remain welcome to attend in person or make representations in the usual manner. Now, 2A to E is broadly what we're doing now, but bringing our full council meetings into line with the changes we've made to reflect COVID guidance changing for all of our committee meetings that we are currently doing. 3 is to also, there's motion 3, which is to reflect the work of NALC and other bodies around virtual and hybrid meetings, and to continue to lobby government to see if they could be introduced, and to ask this council to support the effort of those bodies to see if the legislation can be changed. So those are the motions in overview. The report obviously gives much more detail than that, but hopefully the detail of the report is there. And and motion 3 corresponds to section 4 of the report, which is we're calling the NALC motion. We've also set out financial implications of the current meeting options that we're proposing. And again, hopefully they make reasonable sense, but I'm happy to take questions. And then moving on to page 48, we have the current draft timetable. I do, if you'll indulge me, I have one amendment to it, if you don't mind, which was we've looked with Karen RFO and relevant officers at the date of the June FNGP meeting, and we're actually going to put that back a week to the 28th of June from the 21st of June, because that will fit better with our year-end and internal auditor timetables and doesn't have an impact on any other meetings around that time, because as you can see, there's no other Tuesday meetings happening within that period. We have our usual 3 weekly cycle of planning and highways meetings, but as we live with now, we have to have planning and highways meetings every 3 weeks, as we know, because of planning timetables, and I think councillors would agree those arrangements work well. But having so many planning and highways meetings means it's impossible to have weeks where those meetings won't sometimes fall in the same week as other committee meetings. They're simply too frequent for that to take place. So that would mean, in this case, we'd have an F&GP on 28th and a planning and highways on the 30th that week. But there are other examples through the year where we have 2 meetings a week because we have a planning and highways meeting at the same time as another committee falls due. The rest, beyond that, again, is further details, is the paper from NALC and the partner organisations about hybrid meetings. So that's my walkthrough of the report. I'm happy to take any questions or comments from councillors. Thank you.
Okay, questions from the Town Clerk? Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Chair. I can understand why moving full council meetings to the View is financially beneficial to the council. But there is no public transport up there. I myself, I don't drive. I know there are other councillors that do not drive. And some of these councillors are older councillors and will struggle to walk up there, as with possibly officers and definitely members of the public. How many members of the public could turn up to the Golf and the View Committee? That's one reason why I didn't put myself forward for the Golf and the View Committee, because it's at the View and it's a struggle to get there. So full council, I can understand why, because there's the room and it was a saving to the council, but to be accessible for full council, for councillors and for members of the public, I'm not too sure that it actually is.
That's a fair question. We're happy to, as I say, we're happy to treat this motion as a draft agreement ahead of full council in May. We're happy to look further into that. I think it's helped. At the same time, I can point out that we have had planning and highways meetings at the View, and they have been very well attended by the public. We haven't been aware of public feedback around disquiet about that venue when we've held planning and highways meetings at that venue. But we hear what you say, and we're happy to have another look at that before the May meeting.
Yes, Councillor Meek.
Thank you, Chair. It's only since the onset of COVID that we've ever seemed to have had full council meetings outside the council chamber. I mean, I personally don't see any reason for not having full council meetings in the council chamber. I know it was a bit of a squash, but unless we got lots of public attending, I mean, we used to have more than 10 seats for public, I seem to remember before. I don't see why it's necessary to go for that much bigger a venue. And as Councillor Borman says, it is in the centre of town where people tend to be, and it's the focal point. I wonder if we ought to just look at that again and find out exactly why we can't use the council chamber.
Well, I think that we are very mindful of the long-term impact of COVID and the changes that have come about as a result of it. And the other problem with using there are 2 other problems using the council chamber, really. It's not really that good for any public access anyway, where we've got a current situation where the door of the venue is downstairs and the meeting room is upstairs with no link between them or no visible link between them. So when we have meetings in the council chamber and public attending, it's actually can be quite logistically difficult because we're going upstairs and downstairs and that puts strain upon us. But also, more importantly, that room is very small. And I would be very surprised if during the year we had no meetings take place where I'll put it more positive, I'll put it not double negative. I would expect there to be meetings during the year where that room will be too small. So for the sake of the workload of our officers, I think it makes more sense to decide upon an appropriate venue for full council meetings rather than have a venue and then change it because we have too many people coming to the meeting. So we think it's more sensible to recognise the council chamber is barely big enough for the meetings in the life before COVID, and now with COVID, we think there will be people who will feel uncomfortable, to say the least, to be so tightly crammed into such a small room, especially if there are members of the public attending as well. Of course, we will follow council lead on this, but our opinion is we don't really see that room as suitable for the number of people we anticipate for a full council meeting where there is significant public attendance.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Let's go to the people who have not asked questions so far. Councillor Honeyman and then Councillor Brown. Then we'll come back to the side of the room.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few points. It says about in, sorry, what's the letter? 1.5H about the personnel committee meetings would be a minimum twice a year, and the date would be agreed with the chair of personnel. As it's such a small committee, is it possible that the committee could have a selection of dates? Because often, because obviously when there's set dates, you can put them in the diary, which is what you've got here, but when it's sort of more ad hoc dates, just wondered if that could be open to the whole committee to be chosen for the dates as well. I understand Councillor Borman's comment about the view and everything. It is nice, I have always felt when we've been at the Town Council offices, though, we are very squashed up, but I totally get Councillor Borman's point about the fact that if you don't come by if you're coming by public transport, it's nigh impossible to get up there, so I totally understand Councillor Borman's, but I also know there's space, so there's fors and against that being up at the view. And I suppose, yeah, meetings moving to a Tuesday, which has always been on Thursday, but honestly, a new start is coming, and it says a fresh start, so things could be changing around. It's just that some of us have already got commitments on the Tuesdays, so it's just whether you choose to stay on those committees or not. That's the way around it, really, isn't it? That's just a couple of points.
Thank you. That's sensible in terms of us needing to set out an agenda or a timetable for the year in advance of the annual meeting when people can decide what they can and can't go along to. Thanks for the question about personnel having negotiated dates.
I think that really what we're saying is that the operation of the Personnel Committee is best decided in liaison with the chair of that committee because of the nature of its work. We've in the past had effectively notional dates for this committee that then haven't happened because there haven't been the appropriate dates for the business of that committee to consider. So we will consider, but we're happy to take away and look at that for the final thing, so we could put 6 notional dates into the calendar, but on the understanding that most of those meetings won't happen, and it could be councillors don't find that helpful to have dates of meetings that aren't going to take place.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very pleased to see that council officers have taken note of the concerns of the councillors on the frequency of council meetings and the length of agendas. So thank you very much for that. That's a big improvement on what we've got at the moment. I'd also like to support that the full council meetings do move to a bigger venue, because the council chamber is totally unsuitable for the number of people that participate. 20 councillors, 5 members of staff, maybe up to 15 members of the public. It's intolerable being in that room in those conditions. So I recommend that we do move to a bigger venue. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Borman. And then, okay, Councillor Payne.
The hybrid meetings, is that online, and that didn't work in the past? Why would it work now? The ones we had here were absolute disaster. Yeah, it just seems that we're going, oh, it didn't work. Oh, well, let's do it again. You know, it just didn't work.
Town Clerk.
We're just asking councillors to see what they want to do in this circumstance. We're very conscious of the fact that, as our own town council, we haven't kept on with the hybrid meetings, and people are going to have to pursue on that basis. But we wanted councillors to be aware of the campaign that our own national body is undertaking on this issue, and see if they wish Seaford Town Council's name to be added to the list of organisations supporting NOUT's campaign on this issue. That's your decision on motion 3. It is a matter for you guys to see what you decide, but we've heard what you've said in terms of how we're operating ourselves.
Okay, Councillor Meek.
Thank you, Chair. Just as the subject has come up, I think it might be worth saying, and an idea that could be put on the back burner for officers and for councillors for the future. It would appear then that the council chamber isn't fit for purpose. And I think long term, we have to maybe recognise that actually we don't have a sufficiently big space to set aside for our council chamber, which for a town of 27,000 people is a bit ridiculous. And it also underlines the fact that actually this town does not have a community hall or a community centre that is for the public and the citizens of this town. And this is something that really, I think, long term, we should look at. And I mean, I think that it has been a compromise. Herdis House we felt, historically you had to move out of that and then came to these offices. It seems that long term we need a good plan, a kind of 10, 15-year plan, I would suggest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Meek. Anyone else want to speak on this? Councillor Dunn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I completely support a better venue than the chambers, only for the fact that I've now come quite severely disabled, and there are many people that probably would like to come to one of our council meetings, but the disability would hinder that, because our chambers is just not really... I know we have the lift, but it's not very straightforward. You have to get a member of staff to let it down and bring it back up, and it's not really conducive for people with disability, and if their wheelchairs or their mobility scooters are bigger than our lift, then they can't access it. So, but I do agree with Councillor Meek that maybe long term we should be looking at a better, I know it's difficult with lack of space in the town, but could we, I know it's really off the wall, but could we try to revisit the library? I mean, that would make so much sense if we as council offices, if the council with its offices could go into the library, the ground floor, more accessible, it's in the town centre. It's something that was revisited many, many, many moons ago, but I think we should try to go back to it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Town Clerk.
Yeah, all these points are noted very carefully, although we would remind councillors of the motion we're discussing this evening, which is outside the scope of. At the same time, as councillors are aware, we will be working with you on new strategic plans for the council, and of course at that point you may wish to bring into that conversation venues for ourselves or community spaces for the town. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's the end of the questions. Now it's a question of the process. There were in the discussion some things that might change within the report. Do you want to put these recommendations one by one, or is there anything to be changed before we can do that?
Okay, that's a fair question, Chair. I think that I think that the most appropriate, maybe the most appropriate thing to add to the motions would be I think maybe at the end of each motion 1 and motion 2, something along the lines of asking officers to also continue to investigate the most appropriate times and venues based upon the discussions tonight, something like that.
Yes, that seems, so that would be at the end of both.
Councillor Bourne may have a suggestion.
Yes, Councillor Bourne. Councillor Bourne.
Thank you, Chair. As there's less than half the councillors here this evening, is it possible, if this is agreed, that actually the town clerk then emails all councillors for their feedback on this, on these points, and obviously what was discussed this evening, and so they can have an input into what's been said this evening already and add to it before it comes back.
So just to be clear, you're saying to vote on this motion, but then to circulate the outcome to the councillors, or to go to councillors before this motion comes to council?
The clerk's just added that the officers will continue to look into some of these issues that have been raised this evening. So can these issues be raised with, because there's less than half of us here this evening, so the other half can actually feed back into these discussions as well.
Yeah, well, we would do that as a matter of course, but also, Councillor Borman, to be clear, that as we are saying, these are proposals that will be brought to the next full council for their agreement. So all councillors will have the opportunity at the next full council. I'm conscious we have 10 councillors at this meeting tonight, and I'm grateful to all 10 of you for coming this evening. That is comfortably above our quorum for discussions, for all decisions this evening. But please be assured that we will be consulting further with councillors after the meeting this evening, including those who are not present.
Councillor Cash.
Are we going to discuss the subject of the hybrid meeting separately in a moment, or do you want to speak on that now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we should take the three motions separately. So we're making an additional clause to motion 1, and we're going to take motions 1, 2 and 3 separately. I'm not proposing to say any more on the hybrid issue. I think we've covered that in the discussion.
Yes, you've explained the reason why we need to have the ability to talk about hybrid meetings, whether or not it proves to be workable, but we need to be in that conversation across the country. So I'll put these to the meeting one by one then. So, and in terms of the recommendations, full council recommended 1, to approve the draft 2022-23 meeting timetable. This will be presented for final approval at the full council on 12th of May. And the meeting after the annual meeting, and that officers will continue to consult with. What's the wording for that? Consult
with councillors on the final timetable.
On the details on the final timetable. So, if someone proposed that, Councillor Brown. Someone second that, Councillor Payne. Those in favour of that?
Okay, thank you.
That's okay. Recommendation 1 is carried. Now we go to recommendation 2, to note the update regarding the meeting arrangements and approve the following. And that goes all the way down to the end of item E, and that will have the same addition that officers would then be consulting about that. Do you want to take items A to E separately, or take recommendation 2 as one piece? One piece? Yes? Okay, someone propose that for me? Councillor Payne. Someone second that, Councillor Honeyman. This is recommendation 2, so those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Now we're going to recommendation 3, to consider whether it wishes to pass the following motion showing continued support of legislation being introduced to allow councils the option to hold virtual hybrid meetings, and the motion would be: this council supports the petition launched by ADSO and LLG on 5 January with regard to remote and hybrid meetings. We agree to write to the Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, calling on the government to change the law to allow councils the flexibility to hold such meetings when they deem appropriate within the agreed rules, and our officers will consult with the other members about this. Yes, we're content with that, to put that in as it is. Okay, someone propose that. Councillor Argent, Councillor Honeyman seconds that. All those in favour? Any against? 2 against. I declare that's carried. I'm abstaining, by the way. Okay, that brings us to the end of the report on item 15. Now, having excuse myself from speaking about this, I understand the town clerk wishes to thank the Seaford Baptist Church for the use of their rooms to date.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I just want to thank on behalf of the council, thank you guys very much for all the facilities and hospitality you've given us during the COVID period, and we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
I would support that motion. I would support that comment. So thank you for that. Okay, thank you. That moves us on from item 15 to item 16, and the annual review of the corporate risk register. Over to Karen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So as part of the Council's corporate governance and good practice means that we should review our risks, our strategic risks annually. This also informs the annual governance statement, which councillors will authorise the Chair and the Mayor and the Town Clerk to sign in June when the final accounts are done. So all councillors, I believe, have seen a copy of the full risk register. Normally on this report we would put the actions, but we don't have any this year. So the other part of it is the general and financial risk assessment, which is presented in Appendix A. So I'm willing to take any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, thank you. We're in between pages 53 and 64. Any questions to the RFO about this? Don't see any. Okay, thank you. So shall we put this to the recommendation to the vote then? So the council is recommended to acknowledge the review of the Town Council's corporate risk register. Yes, I've read a copy of that online. There's a lot of it so well done. There's lots of work in there. So to acknowledge the review of the Town Council's corporate risk register and to adopt the revised general and financial risk assessment as presented in Appendix A. Someone propose that for me? Councillor Borman. Someone second that? Councillor Cash. All those in favour? Carried. Abstain. One abstention. Okay, that recommendation is carried. Thank you. Now we move on to item 17. We're on page 65, and this is back with our RFO again.
Thank you, Chair. The second part of our go to corporate governance is to review our internal controls to make sure that they're appropriate for the year ahead. This has been done and it's set out in Appendix A. This also informs the other statements in the annual governance statement, which again are laid out, the reasons in Appendix B, which again makes it so that you're assured that the actual annual governance statement is ready in June, Karen, is ready in June to be signed. So again, I would be happy to accept any questions.
Any questions to Karen? No, I think everybody's clear about that. It's clear and well presented. So we come to the recommendations to review, comment upon and approve the Council's internal controls as set out in Appendix A. That's taken us through to page 72. To note that statements 2, 5, 6 and 7 of the annual governance statement have been complied with as set out in Appendix B. Can we take those two together? Yes, proposed to be accepted together. Councillor Payne proposed and seconded. So that's put to the vote. Those in favour of those two recommendations? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. That's carried. Now we're on to item 18, and this one is to approve the annual investment strategy 22-23. Back to our RFO again.
Thank you, Chair. Another form of good corporate governance is to review our annual investment strategy. This has been reviewed. The only change in there are figures of what's expected in the year. It's worth noting that the interest we've received is quite low, but the last couple of months it has actually started to creep up as we've seen the interest rates have gone up. So again, just asking for approval, but I'm happy to accept any questions if anybody has on the strategy.
Okay, we're into pages between 73 and 77. Any questions to Karen? Councillor Brown?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the investment strategy is working very well at the moment and it's to the benefit of the council. I therefore recommend we accept this motion.
Okay, thank you. I think that's proposed. Someone second that. Councillor Payne. Let's put that to the vote then. That the council is recommended to approve the annual investment strategy 22-23, set out in Appendix A, to note the contents of the report. Those in favour? That's carried. That's unanimous. Thank you. Now we're on to page 78. agenda item 19, and the sickness absence policy review. Who will speak to this?
I'm going to speak to this. I'm grateful to Georgia for her work upon the report and the papers that go with it, and for also the work of the Town Council's Personnel Committee to enable this report to be brought to full council this evening. So thank you everybody for that. As you can see, the purpose of this report is to enable councillors to adopt the sickness absence policy as presented with this report, and as previously considered by the Town Council's Personnel Committee at their meeting on the 18th of November 2021. As you can see in the report at point 1.3, Appendix A shows the revisions with track changes for clarity for councillors of the changes recommended by the Personnel Committee. The majority of these changes identified bring the policy in line with current practice. Members will also note it's recommended to remove the sickness absence bonus scheme. This report goes on to explain more details as a reminder to councillors about the sickness absence bonus scheme. And then when you get to that takes you down to 1.11 on the report. And then at 1.11, the Personnel Committee were recommending that the sickness absence bonus scheme not be continued with for the reasons that are set out at point 111 within the report. As we go on to say, we're going to be surveying staff during this year on a number of personnel matters, including potential benefits the council may be able to offer ahead of any budgetary decisions in 2023-2024. And again, the financial implications, again, as explained here, given the recommendation within the report, within the Personnel Committee, the budget has been based upon it not being there. But if we choose to pursue it, that would be a cost of 3,800, estimate of 3,800 for the council to have to bear during this financial year. But as we've said, the Personnel Committee's unanimous recommendation was that we don't continue with this arrangement. I hope to take any questions or comments. Thank you.
Any questions? No, I don't see any hands. Okay. So we move to the recommendation, which is number 1, to adopt the sickness absence policy as presented with the report 15521. Someone propose that? Councillor Honeyman, Councillor Dunn to second that. All those in favour? Okay, that's carried.
Chair. Thank you.
So we've come to the end of the agenda.